"I'd like you all to meet my future father-in-law," Nathan said with a proud smile, his hand resting on my daughter's shoulder. Then he turned to the crowded living room, cleared his throat, and added with a laugh that cut through me like glass. "He's nobody. Just a retired man with nothing much to show for his life." The laughter that followed was awkward, some polite chuckles, some confused looks. I felt my chest tighten, the room spinning. My daughter, Emma, froze in disbelief, her face flushing crimson. "I am Richard Hale, 58 years old. For 30 years, I worked at the same steel plant in Ohio. I raised my only daughter after my wife passed, sacrificed promotions, vacations, even my health so she could have the life I never did. I was never nobody. At least I thought so." The air went heavy as Nathan's mother entered the room. She was elegant, pearls around her neck, her voice calm but sharp. Her eyes landed on me, and instantly drained of color. She clutched her son's wrist so tightly it left marks. Her whisper cut through the chatter, though only Nathan and I heard it. "Do you want to go to jail?" Nathan's smile faltered. His hands began to shake. And in that moment, I realized there was something buried in this family, something dark. And somehow, I was at the center of it. I stood frozen, every eye on me. My daughter's fiancé had just called me nobody. His mother looked like she had seen a ghost. But what could make a woman of her stature threaten her own son with jail, just by looking at me? The room was silent. My heart was pounding. And I thought to myself, what the hell have I just walked into? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room of my daughter's apartment, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles, creaking like old bones. Nathan's words echoed in my head. Asterisk, he's nobody. Asterisk. I thought about how my co-workers at the plant used to clap me on the back and call me the backbone of the line. I thought about the nights I worked overtime, missing Emma's school plays, her choir concerts, because we needed the extra money for her braces, for her textbooks, for that one trip she begged for to Disney World. I had done everything I could to make sure she would never feel the poverty I grew up in. And now, the boy she wanted to marry had dismissed me like a piece of dirt under his shoe. My chest burned with shame, but beneath it all, something colder began to stir, a question I couldn't shake. Why did his mother look at me like that? The memory of her face replayed over and over. Margaret, her name, I'd learned, wasn't just pale. She was terrified. Not of me, but of what my presence meant. I've seen that look before. In the plant, when men were caught stealing copper wire. In the eyes of a drunk driver when the cops pulled him over. It was the look of someone who suddenly realized their life could crumble in an instant. Her whisper wasn't meant for me, but it was meant to silence her son. "Do you want to go to jail?" That wasn't casual. That was a warning. My mind started to build possibilities. Had Nathan done something illegal? Was he hiding it from Emma? And if so, how did I fit into this? The insult I could swallow. But the idea that my daughter might be walking into something dangerous, that lit a fire in me. Flashbacks came like ghosts. I remembered the day Emma was born, her tiny fists gripping my finger as if she already knew I was all she had. Her mother, Grace, had been the love of my life. She didn't survive the surgery, and I walked out of that hospital with both grief and a newborn baby in my arms. People told me to remarry, to give Emma a mother. But I couldn't. I promised Grace on her deathbed that I would raise our daughter with both my strength and her tenderness. And I did. Diapers, midnight feedings, scraped knees, first heartbreaks. I was there for all of it. There were nights when I had nothing in my stomach but bread crusts because I wanted Emma to have the last piece of chicken. There were winters when the heater barely worked, and I'd pretend I wasn't cold so she'd keep the blanket. I thought being a father was the one thing I had done right. And now, as a grown woman, Emma looked at Nathan like he hung the moon. That scared me more than anything. The next morning, Emma made me pancakes, smiling too brightly, as if to erase the memory of the night before. "Dad, Nathan didn't mean it," she said. "He jokes around too much when he's nervous." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to keep peace. But I'd worked with men like Nathan, men who hid arrogance behind a smile, who charmed the bosses but sneered at the workers when backs were turned. I could see the future in my mind like a film reel. Emma, shrinking smaller and smaller under Nathan's control, excusing his cruelty until it became normal. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "a joke shouldn't leave you embarrassed in front of your family." She set her fork down, eyes clouding. "Dad, please. Don't ruin this for me." Those words cut deeper than Nathan's insult. For the first time, I wasn't sure Emma was on my side. I decided to learn more. If Margaret was scared, there had to be a reason. That afternoon, while Emma was at work and Nathan was out, I went for a walk in their neighborhood. A quiet suburb, houses lined with trimmed lawns and flags on porches. Too perfect, too polished. Margaret's house was 2 streets down. I stopped at the corner, staring at it. White siding, black shutters, a car in the driveway that cost more than I'd made in a year at the plant. I noticed something odd. A man in a suit leaving quickly, carrying a leather briefcase, glancing around like he didn't want to be seen. My gut told me Margaret wasn't just some polite homemaker. There was money here, influence, and maybe something rotten hiding under the clean paint. I knew better than to approach her directly, not yet. But I promised myself I would find out what Nathan was hiding before I gave my blessing to this marriage. That night, as I sat in my daughter's apartment, I pulled out the old shoebox I'd carried for years. Inside were letters, photographs, pay stubs, and one faded newspaper clipping. It was from 30 years ago, a story about a scandal at a finance company in Cleveland. At the time, I had dismissed it as another corporate mess that had nothing to do with me. But as I looked closer, my heart skipped. The name, Margaret Lanson, was printed in bold. She had been listed as one of the accountants questioned in an embezzlement scheme. The charges were dropped, but the stain of suspicion lingered. I sat back, connecting dots. Could it be the same woman? Could it be Nathan's mother? And if it was, then what had she whispered about jail? Maybe her past wasn't as clean as it looked. And maybe Nathan wasn't just arrogant. Maybe he was dangerous. For days, I watched. I listened. I became invisible, the way an old man can when people assume he's harmless. I heard Nathan on the phone late at night, his voice sharp, impatient. "No, you can't back out now. Do you know how much money's on the line?" My stomach twisted. I had lived long enough to recognize the tone of a man entangled in something shady. When he noticed me watching from the kitchen doorway, he smiled too wide and quickly changed the subject, asking if I wanted to play cards. That only confirmed my suspicion. Emma, blind with love, didn't notice any of it. She was planning the wedding, laughing about venues, showing me invitations. I smiled back for her sake, but inside, I felt the weight of a storm gathering. One evening, Emma came to me, her eyes shining. "Dad, Nathan's family wants to host the wedding at their estate. Isn't that wonderful? They're covering everything. You won't have to pay a cent." Her words were meant to soothe me, but they chilled me instead. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that nothing comes free. Especially not from people with money and secrets. I held her hand and said, "Emma, listen to me. Sometimes the most expensive gifts come with the highest price." She pulled away, frustrated. "Dad, why can't you just be happy for me?" She left the room in tears, and I sat there alone, staring at the photo of Grace on the mantel. "What would you do, Grace?" I whispered. And deep down, I knew the answer. Protect her. At any cost. The next day, Margaret came to see me. She found me sitting on a park bench, feeding pigeons like any other retiree. She sat down beside me without a word, her perfume sharp, her posture perfect. After a long silence, she said, "Mr. Hale, you need to stay out of my family's business." I turned to her, keeping my voice calm. "Your son insulted me in front of everyone. And you threatened him with jail. Tell me why." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she would deny it. But instead, she whispered, "Because if he doesn't stop what he's doing, he'll drag us all down. And your daughter will go down with him." My blood ran cold. Margaret stood, smoothed her coat, and walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night, as I lay awake again, I realized 2 things. First, Nathan wasn't just arrogant. He was standing on a fault line ready to crack. And second, Margaret, for all her coldness, was just as desperate as I was to keep it hidden. I thought back to Nathan's shaking hands, her pale face, and her warning. Jail. That word echoed louder than any insult. What crime had been committed? And more importantly, how could I save Emma before she was tied to it forever? The answer came to me slowly, like steel cooling after the fire. I would not confront Nathan directly, not yet. I would wait, watch, and gather the truth piece by piece. Because if there's one thing 30 years at the plant taught me, it's patience. And I would use that patience now. For Emma. For Grace. For myself. But I also knew this. When the truth came out, it would not just ruin a wedding. It might destroy a family. And maybe, it might even destroy mine. The following week, the tension in Emma's apartment was thick enough to choke on. Every conversation felt like a balancing act. Emma trying to defend Nathan, me trying to protect her without pushing her away. She thought love could smooth out the edges of arrogance. But I'd lived long enough to know, sharp edges only cut deeper over time. I started keeping a small notebook, jotting down every odd word, every suspicious action. Years at the steel plant had taught me to notice details. A missing bolt here, a shift in temperature there, signs of bigger problems coming. Nathan was no different. His mask of charm was slipping, piece by piece. And I was determined to catch every crack before it swallowed my daughter whole. One evening, Nathan came home late, his tie loose, his eyes bloodshot. Emma rushed to him, worried, but he brushed her off with a quick kiss and said he was just busy with work. I asked him what he did exactly. What kind of job kept him out until 2 a.m. with his shirt smelling of whiskey? He grinned that salesman's grin and said, "Finance, Richard. Numbers. Stuff you wouldn't care about." Then he excused himself, heading straight to the shower. Emma followed him with her eyes soft and forgiving, but I saw what she didn't, the trembling in his hands as he loosened his cufflinks. Trembling doesn't come from finance. It comes from fear. That night, I waited until the apartment was quiet. I opened the jacket Nathan had thrown over the chair. Inside was a folded paper, an invoice. My eyes narrowed as I read the words, "Wire transfer request, $200,000." The account names were blacked out, but I knew enough to understand this wasn't normal. Men like me don't handle six figures, but I've seen men ruined by less. My stomach twisted. Was Nathan laundering money? Running some kind of scheme? I tucked the paper back into his jacket before Emma noticed. As I closed the closet door, I whispered to myself, "What have you dragged her into, boy?" Flashbacks hit me again. I remembered how hard it was to save even a few dollars when Emma was in school. I worked double shifts for years just to keep a small college fund alive. I still remember her face when I handed her the acceptance letter to Ohio State. She cried, hugged me, said, "Dad, you're my hero." I lived on that moment for months. And now, standing in her living room, I felt like I was failing her. She thought Nathan was her hero, but everything I'd seen told me he was a villain wearing a borrowed crown. My hands shook with the weight of it. I wouldn't, let my daughter marry into a lie. I started following Nathan. Quietly. An old man walking the streets didn't draw much attention. He went downtown often, meeting men in sharp suits in restaurants too expensive for honesty. I sat a few tables away, nursing black coffee, pretending to read the paper. Their voices were low, but I caught enough, words like client, risk, and cover. Once, one of them slapped Nathan's back and said, "If this blows up, we're all screwed." Nathan laughed, but it was forced, hollow. My notebook filled quickly with names, dates, and scraps of conversation. Each entry was a nail in the coffin of his respectability. I didn't know yet what he was doing, but I knew one thing. Emma was standing on quicksand, and Nathan was the one pulling her down. But the more I dug, the more Emma pulled away from me. One night, she confronted me in the kitchen, tears brimming in her eyes. "Dad, Nathan told me you've been following him. Is that true?" I froze. "Emma, listen to me, he's hiding something. I can feel it." She shook her head. "You're just jealous. You don't like him because he's not like you. He has ambition, drive. You never wanted more than your factory job." Her words stung worse than any insult Nathan could throw. Jealous? I wanted to shout that I'd sacrificed everything so she could chase dreams bigger than mine. Instead, I swallowed the pain and said quietly, "Sweetheart, ambition without honesty is poison." She didn't answer. She turned away, wiping her cheeks. That night, I lay awake, feeling more alone than ever. The turning point came 2 days later. I was walking back from the grocery store when I saw Nathan across the street, arguing with a man beside a black SUV. The man shoved him hard against the car, and I caught the words, "You're late on your payment." Nathan's face went pale, but he forced a smile and said, "I'll have it. Just give me time." My chest tightened. This wasn't business. This was debt. Dangerous debt. I ducked behind a tree, heart pounding. When the SUV sped away, Nathan stood there for a long time, shaking. Then he lit a cigarette with trembling hands. The image burned into me, my daughter's fiancé owing money to men who didn't forgive easily. That night, I couldn't stay silent any longer. I pulled Emma aside and told her what I saw. She stared at me, then laughed bitterly. "Dad, you're imagining things. Nathan told me about you, how you can be paranoid. You don't trust people. You always think the worst." My throat tightened. "Emma, please. Look at me. Do you really think I'd lie to you?" She hesitated, her eyes searching mine, but then Nathan walked in, wrapping his arm around her. "What's this about?" he asked smoothly. Emma wiped her eyes and said nothing. Nathan smiled at me, but it was the kind of smile that carried a warning. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't just trying to marry Emma. He was trying to take her away from me completely. Late that night, I returned to my shoebox. I pulled out the old newspaper clipping again, tracing Margaret's name with my finger. Her whispered words haunted me. "Do you want to go to jail?" Maybe she knew everything her son was doing. Maybe she'd been covering for him for years. And maybe, just maybe, she was afraid I would be the one to expose it. My mind turned, heavy as steel, but sharp as the blades I used to sharpen at the plant. If Margaret thought I would stay silent, she was wrong. I didn't fight for 30 years, didn't sacrifice every piece of myself, to watch my daughter walk into a trap. I made a decision that night. I would not confront Nathan again. Not yet. Men like him only doubled down when threatened. Instead, I would keep gathering, keep building my case. When the time came, I would show Emma the truth in a way that even love couldn't deny. I would show her the mask ripped clean off. But I also knew something darker. Nathan wasn't just arrogant, he was desperate. And desperate men are dangerous. I closed my notebook, tucked it beneath my pillow, and whispered into the dark. "Grace, help me. Because if I don't stop him, he's going to destroy her." The morning after my decision, I woke with a kind of heaviness I hadn't felt since Grace died. It wasn't just the weight of exhaustion, it was the weight of responsibility. Emma's life was slipping through my fingers, and if I didn't act, she would drown in Nathan's lies. I dressed, laced up my old steel-toe boots, and went downtown again. The plant had taught me one thing: if you want the truth, you don't wait for it to fall in your lap. You chase it down. That's how we caught leaks in the pipes, cracks in the beams, by looking where no one else wanted to. And I was ready to look. My first stop was the diner across from the tall glass building Nathan frequented. I nursed black coffee, pretending to read the paper, while my eyes followed every person who walked in or out of those tinted doors. Around 11, Nathan appeared, wearing a sharp blue suit that didn't match the panic in his eyes. He wasn't alone. Beside him walked a man I'd seen before, the same one who shoved him against the SUV. This time, the man smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides a blade. They disappeared into the building. I waited, patient. 2 hours later, Nathan walked out alone. His tie was loose again, his forehead damp. He didn't see me as he passed by, talking frantically on his phone. "No, I told you, don't put my name on anything. Do you understand?" Nothing ties back to me. My gut twisted. If he was begging for his name to be hidden, then whatever he was involved in wasn't just shady. It was criminal. And it was only a matter of time before Emma's name was dragged through the same mud. I decided to dig where Nathan's smile couldn't reach, the public records office. An old friend from the plant had retired there, and after a quick phone call, I found myself in a dusty room surrounded by filing cabinets and humming fluorescent lights. "What are you looking for, Rich?" my friend asked. I hesitated. "Property records. Anything tied to a Nathan Lanson." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. 30 minutes later, I had a thin folder in my hands. Inside were 3 property deeds, 2 under Nathan's name, 1 under his mother's. The troubling part wasn't the ownership. It was the mortgages. Each one had been refinanced multiple times in the past 2 years. Money was being pulled out faster than it could be paid back. My throat tightened. Nathan wasn't building wealth. He was bleeding it dry. That night, Emma found me sitting at the table with the folder open. Her face darkened. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Emma, listen. Nathan is drowning in debt. Look at this. He's using properties like piggy banks, and when they run dry," she slammed the folder shut. "Stop it. You're digging into things you don't understand. Nathan told me you'd do this. He said you'd try to ruin us because you can't let me go." Her words pierced me deeper than she knew. I wanted to yell, to shake her until she saw reason, but I stayed quiet. I remembered something Grace used to say: "Don't push the river, Richard. It'll flow when it's ready." Emma wasn't ready yet. But someday she would be, and when that day came, I needed the truth in my hands. 2 days later, I got the message. A note slipped under my apartment door, no signature. "Meet me at the old church on 4th Street. Midnight." My pulse quickened. I knew who it was before I even unfolded the paper. Margaret. The woman who had looked at me like I was a ghost, who whispered jail into her son's ear. At midnight, I walked through the cold night air to the church, its steeple broken, its stained glass boarded. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of dust and old wood. Margaret sat in the front pew, her pearl necklace glinting in the moonlight through the cracks. She didn't look at me as I approached. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "Neither should you," I answered. She turned then, her eyes tired. "You're digging into things that could get you killed, Richard." I sat beside her, my heart heavy. "Then tell me the truth," I said. Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. "Nathan has gotten himself into something he doesn't understand. He thinks he's smarter than the men he works with, but he's not. They're using him." I leaned closer. "Using him for what?" Her lips pressed tight before she whispered, "Money laundering. Millions. It started small, just transfers here and there, but now it's bigger. Too big. If it collapses, they'll need someone to blame, and Nathan will be the first name they throw forward." My stomach dropped. Images of Emma's smile, her laughter, her wedding dress, collided with the thought of her standing beside a husband in handcuffs. "Why didn't you stop him?" I asked. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Because I made the same mistake once. And I've been paying for it ever since." She told me everything then. Years ago, she had been part of an embezzlement scheme at her old firm. She'd escaped charges by turning in colleagues, but her name had been forever stained. She married rich afterward, tried to bury the past, but the habits never left. When Nathan was old enough, he saw the money, the influence, and thought he could outplay the same game. "He's my son," she whispered. "But I can't save him from this. Only you can save Emma." I clenched my fists. "How?" Margaret looked at me, her voice breaking. "By making her see who he really is before it's too late." Then she pressed a small envelope into my hand. "These are bank statements. Proof. But be careful. If Nathan finds out you have them, he won't be the only one after you." I walked home with the envelope burning a hole in my pocket. Inside were copies of transactions, huge sums wired between shell companies, dates matching the nights Nathan came home late. My chest tightened. This was it. The proof. But proof meant nothing if Emma refused to see it. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words repeating in my head, "Save her before it's too late." Grace's face came to me in the dark, her smile gentle. "You can't protect her forever, Richard," she seemed to whisper. "But you can open her eyes." I clenched the envelope tight. Yes, that was my job now. To make her see. The next day, I tried. I showed Emma the papers, begged her to read them. She barely glanced before shoving them back. "Dad, I don't know where you got this, but Nathan said people would try to frame him. These could be fake." My throat burned. "Emma, please. Look at me. I've never lied to you. Why would I start now?" She bit her lip, torn, but then Nathan appeared in the doorway, his smile calm and deadly. "What's going on here?" he asked. Emma shoved the papers into my chest. "Nothing. Just nothing." She stormed out. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you ever pull a stunt like this again, old man, you'll regret it." His eyes were cold, unflinching. I stared back, my fists clenching, but said nothing. He smirked, then walked away. For the first time in years, I felt the old fire of anger rising. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope. Margaret had given me ammunition, but Emma wasn't ready to believe it. Nathan knew I was digging. And now, the walls were closing in. I whispered into the silence, "Grace, guide me." My mind sharpened. I couldn't fight this with anger, not with shouting or threats. I had to be smarter. Patient. If Nathan was laundering money, the truth would come crashing down sooner or later. My job was to make sure Emma wasn't standing beside him when it did. But as I folded the papers back into the envelope, one thought chilled me to the bone. Nathan wasn't afraid of me. Which meant he wasn't afraid of anything. And men like that were the most dangerous of all. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Emma hardly spoke to me, and when she did, her words were clipped, defensive. Nathan had woven himself into her heart so tightly that every warning I gave only seemed to push her further toward him. But silence wasn't an option. I couldn't sit back and watch her step into a life of lies and danger. I knew what it meant to stand on the line, to keep the furnace steady, to carry the weight of lives depending on me. This wasn't the plant anymore. This was my daughter's life. And if I had to stand alone, I would. For 30 years I gave my sweat and blood for my family. Now it was time to give my mind, my patience, and if it came to it, my last ounce of strength. My first step was finding allies. I couldn't fight Nathan and his circle by myself. At the diner downtown, I struck up a conversation with an old face, Detective Harris. He used to work nights near the plant, a decent man with a gruff laugh and a gut that told him when someone was lying. We talked about old times before I slid the envelope across the table. His eyes scanned the statements, his brow furrowed. "Where'd you get these?" he asked. I told him the truth, that they were passed to me by someone who wanted Nathan stopped. He sat back, sighing. "This is enough to start looking deeper. But, Rich, you better be careful. Men tied to this kind of money, they don't like loose ends." I nodded. "I don't care about me. Just protect my daughter." Harris's silence was answer enough. Meanwhile, at home, the tension cracked wider. Emma was planning wedding details with Margaret, who came by often now, her face stiff but her words polished. She pretended warmth, but I could see the fear in her eyes when Nathan wasn't looking. One afternoon, she lingered in the kitchen as Emma tried on dresses in the other room. "You need to hurry," she whispered, her pearls shaking against her neck. "If this wedding happens, your daughter will be tied to everything. Legally, financially. Do you understand?" My chest tightened. "Then help me stop it," I said. She looked at me with eyes that were both pleading and resigned. "I already did. I gave you the papers. The rest is on you." She turned and left before I could say another word, leaving me with a gnawing dread in my gut. I started piecing together Nathan's movements like a puzzle. The late nights, the meetings, the debts. With Harris's help, I learned Nathan's name was showing up in investigations tied to a shell company in Chicago. "They're moving money through property sales," Harris explained over the phone. "Buying, flipping, wiring cash across borders. Classic laundering scheme. He's not smart enough to be running it, but he's definitely involved." I felt both relief and fear. Relief because I finally had proof beyond whispers. Fear because proof meant exposure, and exposure meant danger. Men like the ones Nathan was tangled with didn't let loose ends walk away. And now, because of Margaret's warning and my digging, I was a loose end. Emma, meanwhile, was slipping further into Nathan's orbit. One evening, I overheard them arguing in the living room. "You promised it'd be handled," she snapped, her voice shaking. Nathan hushed her quickly, noticing me in the hallway. "Just wedding stress, Richard," he said smoothly, pulling her close. But Emma's eyes met mine, wide and uncertain, and I knew she was beginning to see cracks in his mask. Still, love is a powerful blindfold. I remembered Grace once telling me that the heart can lie louder than the truth. And I saw that lie playing out now, wrapping Emma tighter and tighter in chains she didn't even feel. I knew I couldn't confront Nathan head-on. That would only push Emma closer to him and paint a target on my back. Instead, I started quietly planting seeds. At dinner, I'd tell small stories from the plant, about men who cut corners, who thought they were smarter than the system, and how every single one eventually paid the price. Emma would roll her eyes, but I saw the way her lips tightened, the way her fork paused mid-air. She was listening, even if she didn't admit it. Sometimes, that's all a father can do. Plant the seed and pray it grows when the time is right. One night, Harris called me with urgency in his voice. "Rich, we pulled some records. Your boy Nathan is connected to a wire transfer flagged by the feds. They've been watching it for months. If this blows, it'll be headlines." My heart pounded. "How long?" Harris hesitated. "Could be weeks. Could be days. But if your daughter marries him before it hits, she'll be dragged right into the mess. Shared accounts. Assets. The works." My knees felt weak. I sat heavily in my chair, staring at the photo of Grace on the mantel. "Then I have to stop this wedding," I whispered. Harris didn't answer, but I knew he agreed. The turning point came sooner than I expected. One evening, while Nathan was out, Emma sat across from me at the table, tears brimming in her eyes. "Dad," she whispered, "do you really think Nathan's lying to me?" I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Sweetheart, I don't just think it. I know it. I've seen it with my own eyes. But you have to want to see it too." Her lip trembled. "If you're wrong, you'll ruin everything." My throat tightened. "And if I'm right, I'll save your life." She pulled away, torn between love and fear. That moment broke me. Because I realized she wasn't just fighting for Nathan. She was fighting against the idea that the man she loved could betray her so completely. That night, I stayed awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. I knew Emma's heart wouldn't turn overnight. Love isn't logic. But time was running out. The wedding was weeks away, the invitations already sent. I whispered into the silence. "Grace, I need you now more than ever. Show me how to protect her." My mind turned with steel-hard resolve. If Emma couldn't see the truth yet, then I would bring it crashing into the light. Quietly, carefully. And when the mask finally shattered, she would have no choice but to walk away. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want justice for myself. All I wanted was my daughter's freedom. The next morning, I put on my boots, picked up my notebook, and walked out the door. The time for watching was over. Now, it was time to move. And as I stepped into the cold air, I knew one thing for certain. Nathan Lanson had made one mistake too many. And this old man was about to make sure he paid for it. The morning after my decision, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: purpose. For years after Grace passed, my life had revolved around survival. Work, food on the table, Emma's school fees. Then retirement hit, and for the first time, I didn't know who I was without the plant. But now I knew. I was Emma's shield. And if Nathan was a storm, I was the wall that would not break. I started my plan quietly. No shouting, no threats. Just patience and persistence, the same way you work molten steel until it bends exactly where you want it. Men like Nathan live on pride and secrecy. To destroy them, you don't fight them head-on. You turn their own lies into chains. My first move was to return to Detective Harris. We met at a quiet coffee shop off the highway, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I slid my notebook across the table, filled with dates, names, and scraps of overheard conversations. Harris scanned it, his jaw tightening. "This is solid, Rich. With the bank statements you gave me, we're building a case. But we need more, something that ties Nathan directly. A signature, a recording, anything that puts him in the driver's seat." I nodded slowly. "Then I'll get it." Harris leaned closer, his voice low. "Be careful. If he even suspects you're onto him, he won't hesitate to shut you up." I looked him square in the eye. I worked 30 years around steel that could melt skin off bone. I'm not afraid of Nathan. At home, I played the part of the tired, clueless old man. I asked Nathan about his finance job, pretending interest, nodding as if I didn't understand half his jargon. Sometimes he bragged, especially after a few drinks. "You know what separates men like me from men like you, Richard," he slurred one evening. "Risk. You worked your life away for pennies. Me? I take risks, and that's why I'll always win." I smiled, sipping my coffee. "Funny thing about risk," I said softly. "Sometimes it burns you before you even know you're on fire." His smile faltered, just for a second, before he laughed it off. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. He knew I wasn't as harmless as he wanted me to be. Emma noticed the tension but didn't know what to do with it. She tried to keep the peace, bouncing between us like a rope pulled too tight. One night she sat beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. "Dad," she whispered, "I just want everyone to get along. Why does it have to be a fight?" My heart ached. "Sweetheart, sometimes peace means letting go of something that hurts you, even if you don't see it yet." She didn't answer. She just squeezed my hand. I wanted to tell her everything, but I knew if I pushed too hard, she'd run straight into Nathan's arms. So I stayed quiet, letting her rest against me, praying that when the truth came out, she'd still see me as the father who loved her more than life itself. Meanwhile, I set my trap. At a pawn shop downtown, I bought a small digital recorder, cheap, easy to hide. I slipped it into my jacket pocket every time Nathan was home. I didn't need long speeches or full confessions. I just needed one slip, one moment where his pride out-talked his caution. Days passed before it happened. One late night, after a heated phone call, Nathan threw his phone on the couch, muttering, "Those idiots think I'm their fall guy? I'm not taking the blame for this." My pulse raced. His words were muffled, but clear enough on the recorder. I smiled to myself in the dark. One nail hammered in. But Nathan was no fool. He started watching me, too. Small things, his eyes lingering when I walked in a room, his voice sharper when I asked questions. One afternoon, he cornered me in the kitchen. "You know, Richard," he said, his smile thin, "you've been awfully curious about my life. Maybe too curious." I looked him dead in the eye. A father worries about the man his daughter's marrying. Nothing strange about that. His smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. "Just remember, curiosity killed the cat." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. And satisfaction brought it back. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He just walked away, his hands balled into fists. I knew then that he suspected me. The clock was ticking faster now. I doubled down. Harris told me the feds were circling closer, but I needed Emma to believe before the hammer dropped. Otherwise, she'd see Nathan as a victim, not a criminal. So I planted another seed. I accidentally left the recorder on the counter one evening, its red light still blinking. Emma picked it up, frowning. "What's this, Dad?" My heart pounded, but I kept my voice calm. Something to remind me what people say when they think no one's listening. She hesitated, then pressed play. Nathan's muttered confession filled the room. Emma froze, her eyes darting between me and the recorder. Before she could speak, Nathan stormed in, snatched it from her hands, and smashed it against the wall. "Don't listen to him," he roared. "He's trying to ruin us." Emma's face went pale. For the first time, she didn't rush to defend him. That night, she locked herself in her room, and Nathan left the apartment in a fury. I sat outside her door, my back against the wall, listening to her muffled sobs. "Emma," I whispered, "I don't need you to believe me right now. Just remember, I'll never lie to you. Never." There was silence, then the faintest sound of her crying harder. My heart broke, but I also felt a sliver of hope. Doubt had been planted, and doubt was stronger than love when it took root. The next morning, Margaret appeared again, unannounced. She looked more fragile than before, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. "He knows," she said without preamble. "Nathan knows you're digging, and that makes you dangerous." I stared at her. "If you're so afraid of him, why keep protecting him?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because he's my son. And because once upon a time, I thought I could outsmart the same men he's working for. I can't watch him fall, but I also can't let your daughter be destroyed." She pressed another envelope into my hand. "These are emails. Enough to bury him. But if you use them, you'll be burning the bridge completely. He'll know it was me, or you." She turned and walked away, leaving me trembling. Inside the envelope, I saw the final weapon I needed. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope spread before me. Emails, statements, transactions, Nathan's fingerprints were all over them. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the weight of the decision. I could take these to Harris, let the law do its work. Or I could hold on to them, wait until the right moment, and show Emma the truth with my own hands. Either way, the end was coming. I looked at Grace's photo on the mantel, her smile steady, her eyes full of trust. "I won't fail her," I whispered. "Not now. Not ever." And as I gathered the papers, one thought burned clear in my mind. Nathan Lanson thought I was nobody. But soon, he was going to learn exactly how dangerous nobody could be. It started with silence. Nathan stopped pretending to like me. He no longer forced smiles or polite nods. Now, when he looked at me, it was with the eyes of a predator deciding how to strike. Emma felt it too. Her laughter around him sounded strained, her questions sharper. Still, she clung to hope, desperate to believe she hadn't built her future on sand. I could see the storm coming. One night, while washing dishes, I caught Nathan standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like a wolf. "You're a stubborn old man," he said quietly. "But every problem has a solution. And you're a problem, Richard." His voice was calm, too calm. Then he smiled and walked away. I dried my hands, staring at the empty doorway, and knew the war between us was about to turn deadly personal. The next blow came swiftly. Emma received a letter from Nathan's lawyer. Yes, his lawyer. It claimed I had been harassing Nathan, digging into his finances, threatening his safety. Emma brought it to me with trembling hands. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, her voice cracking. I read it slowly, anger burning through me. "It's his game," I said firmly. "He's trying to turn this around, make me look like the villain." Tears filled her eyes. But why would he go this far if he had nothing to hide? That question hung in the air like a blade. I touched her shoulder. Because, sweetheart, the guilty always scream the loudest. Still, doubt gnawed at her. Nathan's lies and my truths were pulling her apart, and I feared she'd snap before the truth saved her. Nathan escalated further. He began controlling Emma's time, insisting she stay at his apartment, isolating her from me. When she did visit, he lingered like a shadow, listening to every word, smiling that venomous smile. I kept my calm, but inside, my fury burned hotter than a blast furnace. This wasn't just about money laundering anymore. This was about control. This was about him breaking my daughter until she couldn't tell north from south. I knew I had to act soon. The emails Margaret gave me felt heavy in my jacket pocket, like a loaded weapon. Harris told me the investigation was close to breaking open, but time was a luxury I no longer had. Nathan wasn't just circling. He was moving in for the kill. The first crack came from Emma herself. Late one night, she called me, her voice shaking. "Dad," she whispered, "Nathan lost his temper." He grabbed my arm. It scared me. My grip on the phone tightened. "Are you safe now?" I asked, forcing calm into my tone. "He's asleep," she said, barely breathing. "I don't know what to do. I love him, but—" Her voice broke. That was all I needed to hear. "Listen to me, Emma. Come home tomorrow. Just come home. Don't explain, don't argue. Just come." There was silence, then a soft, trembling, "Okay." I hung up and sat in the dark, my fists clenched, my jaw tight. He had crossed the line. And tomorrow, the fight would no longer be hidden. But Nathan was already planning his counterstrike. The next morning, he showed up at my house before Emma arrived. His knock was loud, commanding. When I opened the door, he pushed his way in without waiting. "Cut the act, Richard," he snarled. "I know what you're doing. You think you're clever, digging into things that don't concern you. But if you don't back off, you won't just lose Emma, you'll lose everything." I stood my ground, steady as steel. "The only thing I'm losing is patience," I said. "You put your hands on my daughter again, and you'll see what happens." His face twisted with rage, but beneath it, I saw something else, fear. Fear of exposure, fear of losing control. He slammed his fist against the wall, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Emma arrived later, pale and tired. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear. "He told me you threatened him," she whispered. I sighed. "Emma, he's flipping the truth. He's desperate. That's what men do when they know the end is near." She sat at the table, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know who to believe anymore." That shattered me. My daughter, the little girl who once trusted every word I said, now doubted me because of a man who treated her like property. I pulled out the envelope Margaret had given me, sliding it across the table. "You don't have to believe me. Believe this." She hesitated, then opened it. As her eyes scanned the emails, her face drained of color. Her hands trembled, clutching the papers like they were fire. "Dad, this can't be real." Her voice was barely a whisper. Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Nathan stood there, his face flushed with fury. He must have followed her. His eyes darted to the papers in Emma's hands, then to me. "You bastard!" he roared, lunging toward me. Emma screamed, clutching the emails to her chest. I braced myself, but Nathan stopped short, his chest heaving, his fists shaking. "You don't know what you've done," he spat. "You've signed your own death warrant." His words were venom, but his voice cracked with panic. He stormed back out, slamming the door again, leaving Emma frozen in shock. She looked at me, her eyes finally wide with clarity. "He's not who I thought he was," she whispered. "He's dangerous." I wrapped my arms around her as she sobbed, feeling both relief and dread. The truth was finally in her hands, but Nathan wouldn't go down quietly. That night, Harris called. "Rich, we've got enough now. The feds are ready to move. But we need you and your daughter safe. Can you get her out of there for a few days?" I looked at Emma asleep on the couch, clutching the papers like a lifeline. "We'll go," I said. "But Harris, make sure he doesn't slip away. For Emma's sake." Harris's voice was grim. "He won't. But be careful. Cornered animals are the most dangerous." I hung up, staring into the shadows. Nathan was cornered, and tomorrow would be the final battle. The next morning, as I packed a bag for Emma, I spotted something strange. My front door lock had fresh scratches. My blood went cold. He had tried to break in during the night. Rage and fear twisted inside me. I grabbed Emma's bag and shook her gently awake. "We're leaving now," I said firmly. She nodded, still groggy but trusting me. As we walked out to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on us. The air felt heavy, charged. I tightened my grip on the keys, my heart pounding. Nathan wasn't done yet. And I knew the next time we saw him, it would be the moment everything shattered. The morning sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that pressed low and gray, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Emma sat quietly beside me in the car, her face pale, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep. She clutched her bag like it was a shield. I drove us toward the small cabin outside town, where Harris had promised we'd be safe. But halfway down the road, my gut told me something was wrong. The rearview mirror showed headlights, too close, too steady. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Dad," Emma whispered. "Why is that car following us?" My heart pounded. I didn't answer. I just pressed the accelerator, the old engine roaring as we curved off the main road. The car behind us followed. Nathan wasn't done. He was hunting us. I turned sharply onto a gravel road, hoping to shake him, but the headlights stayed close. Emma gasped, fear rising in her voice. "It's him, isn't it?" I nodded once. "Stay calm." My mind raced. I couldn't lead him to the cabin. That was supposed to be safe. So instead, I turned back toward the old steel plant, abandoned now, its towers rusting, windows shattered. It was a place I knew like the lines on my hands, a place where fire had once bent steel to my will. If Nathan wanted a fight, this was where I would make my stand. The gravel crunched as I pulled in, headlights cutting across broken glass and twisted beams. Behind us, Nathan's car screeched to a stop. He stepped out, his face twisted with fury. "You think you can beat me here, old man?" he shouted. Emma clutched my arm. "Dad, don't, he's dangerous." I gently pried her hand free. "Stay in the car, sweetheart. Whatever happens, don't move." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't want to lose you too." I leaned down, kissing her forehead softly. "You won't. I promise." Then I stepped out, the cold air biting, my boots crunching on the gravel. Nathan stood a few yards away, his hands twitching, his chest heaving like a caged animal. "You ruined everything," he screamed. "You think she'll believe you now? You think the cops will save you? You're nothing, Richard. Nothing." I stood tall, shoulders squared. "You've been saying that since the day we met. But you're the one standing here exposed. Not me." His hands shook harder, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. His fear was bigger than his rage. Before either of us could move, another car pulled up fast, lights flashing red and blue. Harris stepped out, flanked by 2 federal agents. "Nathan Lanson," his voice boomed. "You're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." Nathan's face drained of color. He took a step back, shaking his head. No, you can't do this. This old man set me up." Harris's gaze flicked to me, then back to Nathan. "Funny thing, son, we had our eyes on you long before Richard ever got involved. He just helped us see the last piece of the puzzle." Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a drowning man, his arrogance collapsing in real time. He lunged toward me, but Harris and the agents moved faster, pinning him to the ground, cuffing his wrists. His screams echoed through the empty plant. Emma stepped out of the car, her hands trembling as she clutched the papers from Margaret. She looked down at Nathan as the agents pulled him up. "All this time," she whispered, "you lied to me. You made me doubt my own father." Nathan's eyes burned with hatred. "He ruined us. He's jealous, he wants to keep you small, chained to him like he's chained to his dead wife's memory." Emma shook her head, tears falling freely. "No. He's the only one who ever loved me without conditions. You don't even know what love is." Her words hit Nathan harder than the handcuffs. He lowered his head, defeated, as the agents dragged him away. Margaret appeared then, stepping from the shadows of her car, her pearl necklace trembling against her throat. She looked at Nathan, her son, now in chains. Her face crumpled, torn between grief and relief. "I warned you," she whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. "I begged you to stop." Nathan didn't look at her. He just spat at the ground, his silence louder than any insult. Margaret turned to me, her eyes heavy with sorrow. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said softly. "But thank you. You saved her." I studied her for a long moment. "You saved her too. You just didn't realize it." She gave a sad smile, then turned away, watching as her son was taken into the flashing lights. As the cars pulled away, silence settled over the broken plant. Emma leaned into me, her body shaking. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't know how to fix what I broke between us." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "You don't have to fix it. Just walk with me, one step at a time. That's all I need." She buried her face against my chest, sobbing softly. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. Grace's voice seemed to echo in my mind. "Asterisk, you did it. You kept her safe. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, freely. The following weeks blurred with court dates, testimonies, and headlines. Nathan's empire crumbled. Emma testified bravely, her voice steady even as she recounted his lies. Margaret sat in the back, her face a mask of grief. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted. Nathan's hands shook as he was led away, his eyes finding mine one last time. But there was no fire left in him, no pride. Only a broken shell of the man who once called me a nobody. And in that moment, I felt no joy, no triumph. Only quiet peace. Justice had been served, not by rage, but by patience. Months later, Emma and I sat on the porch of my old house, the spring air warm, the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting through the neighborhood. She rested her head on my shoulder, like she used to as a child. "You never gave up on me," she said softly. "Even when I doubted you. Even when I hurt you." I kissed the top of her head. "That's what fathers do, sweetheart. We stand in the fire until it's over." She smiled through her tears. "You're not nobody, Dad. You're everything." My chest tightened with emotion, but I didn't speak. I just held her, watching the sunset paint the sky, knowing Grace would be proud. And so the story ended not with revenge, but with redemption. Nathan's hands had shaken when the truth caught him, just as Margaret warned. Emma found her freedom, and I found my purpose again. For years, I thought my life had ended with retirement and Grace's passing. But I was wrong. My life's greatest fight was still ahead, and I won it, not with bitterness, but with love. And if anyone ever asks me who I am, I'll tell them simply, I am Richard Hale. I am a father. And that will always be enough. My love, did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.